Okay, so good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Workforce Wednesday webinar. My name is Kirsten Bayer, and I'm with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. And we are in the EAF department, or Educational Administration and Foundations department. And we are excited to bring you this Workforce Wednesday webinar today. We are going to be learning hands-on supports for English language learners. So we're excited to hear from Sarah Taylor and Heather Davis about their presentation. A couple of housekeeping things before we get started. We are recording today's webinar. It will be posted on our Illinois Workforce Academy website, as well as Illinois WorkNet will have it posted on their website too. You will also have the slide deck from today, which I will post in the chat momentarily as a PDF, but it will also be on both websites for you. You will also receive a follow-up email tomorrow with a follow-up survey, as well as the URL where you can find the recording and the presentation from today. In the follow-up survey, I know that follow-up surveys are tedious, but it is a great way to collect data and feedback from the system since we serve the whole state of Illinois for this Workforce Wednesday webinar series. And so I highly encourage you to take the follow-up survey. I will post the link to it in the chat before we end today. So if you would like to just take it right away. I know for me, if I'm gonna do a survey, I'm gonna do it right after the event. Because otherwise I kind of forget what I wanted to get feedback on. So we do look at your feedback. I personally sit on the WIOA Professional Development Committee, and I'm the one who goes through all the feedback surveys from all of our Workforce Wednesday webinars and kind of compiles the data so we can better serve the system. We have a question on there asking what kind of Workforce Wednesday webinar topics would you like to see in the future so we can really meet the system where you all are at. So I do encourage your participation on the follow-up survey. Couple of other housekeeping things is that we are on the Zoom webinar platform, which if you have not been on this platform before, it's similar but a little bit different than Zoom meeting. So it does look like a regular Zoom. You have all the same toolbar functions and everything like you normally would, but as an attendee, you do not have the ability to unmute yourself or turn on your camera. So it is a little bit more of a presenter audience formatted presentation as opposed to a collaborative presentation format. And so we do encourage your participation though. You can feel free to type in the chat. Let me go ahead and make sure that's open for everyone because Zoom likes to close it. So now it's open. So you can feel free to say good morning, type in the chat, ask any questions or comments in the chat. You can also type questions in there. You can also type questions in the Q&A if you would like, if that's more comfortable for you. And then we will have a brief portion during the presentation that Sarah and Heather have planned for where we'll stop for Q&A. And if you would like to unmute yourself and ask a question live, you can. You'll simply raise your hand on your Zoom toolbar and then I will give you your microphone back. So it's just a little bit more controlled. And I think that's all the housekeeping. We do have closed captioning on today as well. If you would like to turn that on for either accessibility reasons or note-taking purposes. I always like to have mine on just so I can follow along. And then I'll launch our first Workforce Wednesday webinar poll. We do these every Workforce Wednesday webinar. So if you join us for a lot of Workforce Wednesday webinars, you've probably seen them before. But the first question is just where's your local area? So where are you joining us from within the state? Like I said, on the WIO Professional Development Committee, we have representation from all 4 core partners. And so we want to serve the whole state of Illinois from the tippy top to the bottom. And so we just want to make sure that we're kind of reaching the whole state in terms of who's on today. So we'll give everyone a couple more seconds to answer that poll. All right. So looks like everyone's kind of participated. So we have mostly people from Chicago and Northern Illinois, but quite a few from Central as well, and a couple from down south as well. So thank you for answering that. Excuse me. And then which partner do you best represent? Title 1, 2, 3, or 4? I'm assuming because of today's topic with English language learners, we have a lot of Title 2 folks on today, but I'm hoping we have some Title 1, 3, and 4 as well, so you can better learn how to partner with your adult education community colleges. And just AE programs in general. Okay, looks like everyone's answered that. So I'll share those results. And then Sarah, if you want to pull your slides up, you should be able to. Um, and okay, so it looks like we have mostly Title II people, which we assumed, just great. Thank you. We love when our Title II people show up. And we have a lot of Title I as well, and a couple other WEO partners and stakeholders too, which is awesome to see. Thank you so much. We look forward to hearing your feedback on this session, and I will be here if anyone needs anything. I'll be helping facilitate the questions and everything, and I will hand it off to Sarah and Heather to get their presentation started.
Thanks, Kirsten, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today. The goal of today, we'll just start with an introduction. So like Kirsten said, my name is Sarah Taylor, and I am the Director of Adult Education with World Relief in DuPage and Aurora. So as a refugee resettlement agency, we primarily serve refugees, asylees, asylum seekers, humanitarian parolees, and other community immigrants in our regions. And then Heather Davis, who is joining me today, is our Job and Career Readiness Manager, who oversees our Workforce Readiness classes, our whole program there, and our Bridge program and Student Success Career Navigation. And so our goals for today are to not only present a program model for workforce readiness for English language learners, but to present also the justification and need for serving newly arrived refugees, asylees, and community immigrants with workforce readiness skills in an isolated focused course that operates very much like a Bridge or IELCE course with a lot of civics and employment integration, economic opportunity integration. So we'll talk more about that, but really looking at program model, looking at how the course operates, and then giving you kind of a day in the life of what this course looks like on the ground. And then also advocating for increased support and partnership with our Title I and III partners, just recognizing and acknowledging that this sort of course is absolutely essential for the immigrants in our neighborhoods and in our communities, but is not possible without a really holistic approach and comprehensive support on all ends, and really addressing, as we'll talk about more, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how do we actually support our learners in a way that they learn effectively and procure jobs, and not only procure jobs, but retain their jobs. And then where we see a lot of upskilling and career advancement, which is something that we've been able to see from the programs that we offer in workforce readiness at World Relief. And so I wanted to share that model with you all today. So really where we'll start is kind of broad, an overarching review of just kind of funding and skeleton model for the course, the need and justification that brought our whole workforce readiness program to be, and how it's possible with support services that are really looking at that holistic wraparound service. And then we'll look really more focused in on what the curriculum design looks like, and then give you kind of a taste of some of the experiential opportunities that we invite our students into through our programming and our course design. And then to talk about one thing that is really unique about this program, Workforce Readiness, is that it is ever shifting. So just like the workforce field is ever shifting and the needs are ever shifting, and also the refugee arrivals that we see, the asylees that we see coming to our doors, their needs change. And so the ability to be flexible and have revolving iterations with this course is essential. So like Kirsten said, we will have some Q&A times throughout. We will also have a lot of open participation, and I will be a guinea pig for Heather at different points throughout this presentation as well. So we are excited to welcome you into this, and we'll start by looking at the support and funding options. And really, one of the things that we've seen just as a refugee resettlement agency, Heather will talk about the historical context for why we started this class to begin with decades ago, but really looking at the U.S. Department of Education, Department of Labor, Octane and WIOA, the real need to integrate workforce readiness skills into our English language courses to ensure that we are equipping our community immigrants and refugees with the skills they need to succeed and to thrive in their communities. And that really means that we have to look holistically, not just at English language acquisition in a general sphere, but look at what are the different content areas that we need to equip them with. And so seeing that our funding partners really support this initiative. And so ICCB supports this. We funded this course through ICCB for decades. IELCE, also that framework is really perfectly fits in with the whole design of workforce readiness to see that it is civics integration, economic opportunity, and linguistic integration are all key components of a workforce readiness course. And so it really thrives in that kind of an environment. It also operates really well as a low-level bridge that then can move into a series where we are working with students toward either skilled trades bridges, entrepreneurship bridges, career bridges. It works really well as an on-ramp there as well for our low-level learners. The Office of Refugee Resettlement also has just started in this last year to fund job readiness English language training, again, for the first time in over 8 years. And so to see also the need on a federal level for refugee resettlement for job readiness training in an English language sphere is critically necessary and needed beyond just integration into the general English language classroom. And so that's what we'll talk about how to create an isolated program that specifically gets after really focused workforce readiness skills in an intensive environment. A couple of different restricting pieces with these funding opportunities. What is beneficial on the OCTE-WIOA end is that it's not restricted. So there is not an immigrant status restriction tied to any of that funding that would prevent any community immigrants from joining a workforce readiness class. Whereas with ORR, it is strictly for those who are ORR eligible. So newly arrived refugees, certain asylees, and certain humanitarian parolees. And so if there's a way to blend funding or to find funding within larger streams, we can even meet community needs in a larger way. So those are just different things that drive, and depending on funding sources, that drive the direction and the shape of the course in various iterations throughout the decades. And now Heather will introduce us to the historical context that really brought us into starting this course.
Good morning, everybody. Again, my name is Heather Davis, and I have been teaching with World Relief for 15 years. And of those 15 years, I have spent each one of them either teaching or creating curriculum for our job readiness classes. And we have been offering job readiness classes for approximately 25 years. And the curriculum and the classes, they grow and they change and we refine as we learn more and as the needs of both our clients and the employers that we partner with change. So how we began offering our job readiness class, our employment counselors were able to get them jobs, but then they noticed that a large percentage of our students weren't keeping jobs. And that not only hurt our students, but it also hurt our partnerships that we were developing. So they came to the adult ed department and said, can you please help us? We need to be offering some language skills. We need to be offering more about culture in the US workplace. We don't know how to teach, but you do. So will you help us? And we said, of course we would. And when we started off, it wasn't pretty. And I just want to be upfront with you about that. If you're looking to start something, it doesn't have to be pretty. You just need to start it. And we started off asking the questions, what do our students need to know? What do our employer partners need to know? And how can we do that? And so we are continually evolving and growing. We work closely with our employment counselors and in fact, the entire employment department to keep up to date on what things we need to add to our curriculum, what things we need to take out because they're no longer relevant. And we are currently in probably the third or fourth iteration of our workforce work readiness class since I started teaching. Yeah. And then just to give you a little background on who our student base is, they're typically newly arrived refugees, asylee seekers, humanitarian parolees. We've also been able to open the class up for community immigrants. Our classes are multi-level. We offer them for emergent literacy learners as well as intermediate and advanced level students. Some of our students come to us, they've never held a pencil before. They've never been to school before. And then we have others that come to us with advanced degrees. Our current class, we actually offer 2 classes. Our class A is for emergent learners through high beginning. And our class B is for low intermediate through advanced level students. Each of those are highly multi-level. And just so you know, if you're thinking to yourself, well, you know, we're only going to be able to have one teacher, that's okay. You can offer this program to students. It will be highly multi-level, but you can do it. And then, of course, we also have a lot of our clients have experienced trauma. Most of our newly arrived refugees are also experiencing culture shock. And so we have designed our class to with that in mind, to make it as safe and as welcoming for our students as possible.
And along one of those ways in which we're able to and desire to make our class incredibly welcoming and supportive and safe for those who've been experienced significant trauma and horrors, is to ensure that we have a really robust wraparound service program. And so looking at the support service interdependency, and this is where our partnerships with Title I and Title III are absolutely integral in that workforce development piece, to ensure that while they are learning these content-specific instruction for workforce development, to equip them for their first day on the job, to equip them to succeed on the job, and to equip them to upskill in their jobs. We also are working with our WIOA partners on finding jobs, on how to adjust our curriculum to make sure that it's actually meeting needs, and then working with our community. And as a refugee resettlement agency, a lot of that is really internal. We have that internally, a lot of these departments. So we have family case management, we have mental health counseling, we have driver's permit training, we have career navigation and career pathways support team. And then we also integrate transportation and cultural orientations. And so not all of your Title II programs will have all of these support services wrapped in like we do as a refugee resettlement agency. But this is where, again, that community partnership is absolutely essential to make sure that we are meeting the holistic need of the students so that they do learn. We see their language skills. We see language skill gains in almost all of our students who come through this intensive program. And then we actually, that retention piece in retaining their employment, that cultural orientation piece is absolutely essential for that as well. And to ensure that they are not only aware of what to expect on the job, as we'll talk about in the curriculum, but also how to navigate cultural clashes and how to even navigate their own culture stress. And so one of the things that I love most about this design is that in this 5-week intensive, which again, we'll talk about more in a bit, but in this 5-week intensive, students are able to navigate culture stress they're already hitting up against societally in their neighborhoods and communities as they're getting adjusted and getting Social Security cards and all of the newly arrived pieces that are absolutely essential to them actually being able to start on their first day. They're able to work through a lot of that in these first 5 weeks of their classes, able to work with employment counselors, employment specialists, able to work with an intensive case management, mental health counseling, and to ensure that their children are being enrolled in schools. So all of these pieces to ensure that those physiological needs are being met first and foremost, so that they are stable in their lives while we're also getting them stable for their workforce to retain their jobs. And then that driver's permit training that we're also beginning to re-employ post-COVID in ensuring that our students then are also being equipped to provide their own transportation when they reach a stage when we are not able to provide that anymore. But even the transportation we're also able to provide to class to ensure that they're actually able to even just get there. And so really seeing that one of the absolutely critical pieces in seeing a workforce readiness class succeed for newly arrived refugees, asylum seekers, is this support services piece. And then the next piece, as I've said, also is just that really integral piece of collaboration with WIOA Title I specifically. And really with our workforce development team, they work very closely hand in hand with our RIO Title I partners and other workforce, our LWIB and other workforce development programs in our communities to ensure that our students are placed well and that we are aware of the needs that employers have. And that we're also training and equipping our learners to meet those needs and even just the career fields that are most in need right now, so that we can even begin designing courses and specific content and projects that will equip our learners to succeed in those spheres.
All right. So when we implemented what is our current job readiness model, we incorporated 3 areas. One is thematic workplace language and culture needs. What did our clients need to know about working in the US that would help them succeed? And so we ended up creating, as Sarah mentioned previous, a 5-week intensive course. Unit 1 is personal information. Unit 2 is time. Unit 3 is money. Unit 4 is safety. And Unit 5 is health. It's okay, Sarah, you can go back. Then we also make sure that these lessons are scaffolded for skill development. So within the 5 themes that we have, the lessons build on one another so that they can go from survival English to English that is specifically used in the workforce. So for instance, when we do our unit on time, the students begin with learning to tell time. They also learn to read digital and analog clocks. And then this segues into being able to read a time clock and also be able to understand the language of the time clock, clocking in and out or punching in and out, and understanding being able to clock in on time or reading a calendar. Start off with the basics of reading the days of the week and the months of the year. And then we segue into students being able to read a work schedule and completing a timesheet. And then we also offer hands-on training. So we try and provide activities that are going to kind of simulate what students are going to encounter when they start in the workforce. Since the majority of our clients typically get jobs in factories or warehouses, we focus on activities that include picking and packing, assembly work, and assembly lines. And when we do these activities, we're not only helping our students, but we're assessing them. We're helping them to look at accuracy, speed, quality control, and we share our observations with our employment teams in case we think that there might be some issues with some clients further down the road. All right, next slide. And then this is I'm going to talk a little bit more about our curriculum design. And again, we have been like 15, 20 years in the making of this. So when we look at the first line where it's talking about multifaceted skills development, we didn't have all of this included when we first started doing job readiness. In fact, when I started teaching 15 years ago, we didn't even have computers. So digital literacy wasn't even on our radar at that time. So many of these things we continue to incorporate as we see the need and the importance of those skills for our clients, both in the workforce and also as they continue their education. Again, the language is for survival English and then workplace specific language. So they understand what it means when somebody says pick and pack or clock in and out or punch in and out. And then we also focus on workers' rights. So many of our clients are coming from situations where they've been exploited. If they spoke up for themselves, they were mistreated. And see, we make it very clear to them that they have the right to work in a safe environment where they are not discriminated against. We talk a lot about OSHA, we talk a lot about EEOC, and we talk about ways that they can report problems that they encounter. So our curriculum design is 5 weeks. The first unit is personal information. A lot of that is really your name, telephone number, social security number, birth date, and being able to complete forms. So that's basic forms such as filling out a form to get a library card, and then filling out job applications or completing a resume. Our second unit is all about time. So telling time, days of the week, months of the year, creating a schedule. And then within work readiness, reading a work schedule, understanding the importance of time in the United States work culture. Time is money. And if you're clocking in at 8 o'clock and you're supposed to be starting work at 8, you're late. And so a lot of our clients are coming from cultures where time isn't quite as exact. And so we work with them. And then also the ability to clock in and out using a time clock. Our third unit is all about money. And so we talk about US currency. We talk a lot about banking because we really want our students to open a savings or a checking account. We talk a lot about budgeting because their first job, they might not be making a lot. And so how do we make that money go further with a budget? We also look at reading a time card, reading a paycheck and a pay stub, what are benefits, what are taxes. We look at and how not to get scammed. We also talk a lot about credit and credit cards. And when is it right for you or our clients to think about getting a credit card? Then our fourth unit is all about safety. And this is where we talk about not only safety at home, but also safety at work. And that as workers, they have the right to work in a safe environment. So we talk about a lot about protective gear, identifying unsafe working conditions. How do you report those conditions? And being able to read and follow safety signs. And then our fifth unit is all about health. So we talk about body parts, ailments, going to the doctor. And then we also talk about, when do you call in sick? Do you call in sick when you have a headache? Or does it need to be a little bit more serious than that? And we talk a lot about making the decision, when is it okay to call in sick and when should you go to work?
The final component of what's woven into our curriculum and course design are these experiential integrations, which is multifold in purpose. And so one of them is, again, to give them hands-on training to what they might experience on the job. And so really creating those and designing those based on the majority jobs that our clients are going into. But then as they enter into their first time employment in the US, which can include environments that are very sensory heavy. And so really wanting to prepare them for that in a safe environment where they trust their instructor, they trust the students that they've been building bonds with. And then we create a fun environment that can provide some laughter, but then also ensure that they're aware that you are going into a very highly sensory environment, very likely. And that doesn't have to be your final end point. And so we can work with you with career navigators, student success coaches to ensure that we are moving you toward a career that is a best fit for you and your prior experience and education. But let's also equip you to succeed well in this space. And so we create these experiential integrations embedded into our units that replicate those high sensory environments with loud sounds, loud music, fast pace, looking at high production expectations, looking at quality control. And then also that second piece of, as Heather's kind of touched on a bit, is implementing workplace rhythms as well to create as much of a kind of virtual reality as we can in the classroom, where they are actually clocking in and out on a time clock. They attend to their workstations. They call in when they're absent. When they're sick, they have to call into their instructor like they would on the job. And so navigating a lot of those pieces to ensure that our students are best prepared to succeed and retain their employment, and then not be re-traumatized again as they enter into these high sensory environments. So that kind of gives a broad swooping overview of kind of the funding that makes this possible, the need that has given us the justification for creating these courses, and then just a real broad picture of our curriculum and kind of course design. But before we shift gears and go really specific into what a day in the life, day-to-day looks like in our courses, and give you even some samples of what these experiential integrations look like, we did want to open the floor to any initial questions that you might have at this point.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. So anyone can post in the chat or the Q&A if you have any questions, and then you can also feel free to raise your Zoom hand and I will unmute you. William Dunn asks, where are the courses?
And so right now we have courses in DuPage and Aurora. We have in-person, we have online, and then we've just developed an asynchronous course as well. And so then our online class right now is a hybrid course where we bring students into DuPage 2 days a week, and then they're online for the remaining 2 days a week. Plans for Chicago. So that's one thing that we want to look at also is the asynchronous piece, really piloting that for the high intermediate to advanced level students, which we'll talk about in a bit. But that would have access to all of Illinois. And then looking through what it would look like to create something like this for in an online or hybrid environment with our Chicago offices as well. That's great. All right, well, keep your questions. Feel free to, again, email us or chat as we finish as well, but we'll keep moving at this point. So one thing, just as Heather has mentioned, that I've mentioned, is a 5-week intensive. So kind of the course shape and then how we navigate grant restrictions with this course or grant metrics. It's a 5-week, 12 hours a week course, so it's 60 hours in total. And it is rolling enrollment, which means every week we have students who are graduating and finishing their 5-week iteration, and then we have new students who are also starting. And that allows all of our newly arrived refugees and asylum seekers to continue to move through to ensure that they're not needlessly delayed in the process of acquiring their job, so that they can begin to support themselves as quickly as possible. And so we have our enrollment team who navigates the registration and enrollment with our case management team, making sure that our employment team is making us aware of any important details to be aware of as we enroll students, and to make them ensure that they're in the right level specific class. So again, we have an A level and a B level. So our emergent learners through our high beginning, and then our intermediate to advanced learners in our B class. And we test with Best Plus and Best Lit to ensure that we're really looking at oral skills development and prior education that our students have had as we place them. And then we have just organic curriculum specific evaluations to ensure that there is comprehension of job specific content. And so while, yes, we want that survival English and to ensure that our students are developing those skills, they are just naturally being in a 12-hour-a-week class, developing those language skills, but really wanting to make sure that they are equipped with that job readiness skill. And then just some benefits from the class, we see massive measurable skill gains in their massive language gains from these students in every iteration, because again, that intensive environment is very focused every day. And then we also see 98% employment rates following graduation from this class. And we've just seen, as Heather was saying, the real rationale for starting this course of seeing our clients were not able to retain their employment, and really seeing that has gone away. So our employer partners really seeing those relationships blossom and grow because of that rapport that we have, because this course has been successful in equipping students to retain their jobs. And then the next thing, just that really looking at, as we'll look at kind of the needs that we're constantly assessing, really shifts the modality that we offer the course in. And so and its origination offering the course only strictly in person, with transportation for all of our students in the course. But then with COVID and the pandemic, really that shift went fully online. And then after the pandemic, really looking at, do we want to leave the online environment? We definitely see that there's such an integral component of the in-person environment, especially with experiential integrations, with the trauma piece, where it's absolutely essential to provide some sort of in-person support. But by being online, we're also meeting a need that we weren't able to meet before, where we do have some clients who they immediately arrive in the US and they fall into communities that have already existed. So like the Ukrainian community that is very strong and robust, but then there is still a need for that job readiness skill training. And so while they've fallen into a community, they've fallen into a job right from arrival. And sometimes their driving prevents them from being in a synchronous class, which was then the impetus for starting an asynchronous course. They might be a CDL truck driver who is driving until 10 p.m. at night and has to stop, can't just stop for a synchronous course, whether it's online or in person. Really then thinking through, how do we ensure that we're meeting the needs of our community well, and then being able to be flexible and providing various modalities depending on the season and circumstances that we find our refugee arrivals coming in with. And so we've now have this whole string of modalities where we offer in person for our emergent to low beginning, high beginning level learners, language learners, because that is a really critical and vulnerable space of ensuring that we're meeting those needs and we're able to assess specific student needs on a weekly basis to ensure that we are actually equipping them well for the workplace. And then that hybrid class for our intermediate to advanced level students, where their digital literacy skills may not be high enough to take an online asynchronous course or even an online synchronous course. So they may have the prior education, they may have a higher language level, but their digital literacy skills are such that, or their cultural skills are such, cultural awareness of the Western workplace are such that they would really benefit from those experiential integrations in person and that extra digital literacy support that we're able to provide in our in-person times, where we have a digital literacy specialist who comes into this hybrid class and equips learners on even just basic hardware, how to use an iPad, how to connect to a hotspot, and then how to navigate the various challenges they might face in their online classroom the remainder of the week, while also equipping the entire class for ways in which they might face digital literacy needs throughout their lives. And so whether that's, navigating medical appointments online, navigating using a self-checkout at a grocery store, if that's all that's open, how do we ensure that we are holistically equipping our students to thrive in their communities, which helps them to succeed in their work as well. So we offer varied modalities for varied purposes and varied student needs. And so that really is driven by this continuous needs assessment, where we are then looking at how can we be the most flexible to ensure that we're meeting our students' needs as they change and shift. And so that might mean that sometimes refugee arrivals come in waves where the language levels present shift dramatically, which means that the nature of the course and the focuses of the course needs to shift dramatically. Sometimes we're in a space where we have such high volumes of refugee arrivals that we can't help but have massively multi-level classrooms. And so how do we navigate that? How do we solicit support from the community to get more volunteer engagement so that our instructor is not in a room with 35 students from NRS 1 to 6, navigating job readiness across that varied language span. And so really looking for volunteer support, looking for community support, even from our Title I and III partners of how can we even get more integration into that space to give our students the best support possible. And then we look at their educational background as well. So while the language levels might shift dramatically in waves, the educational levels that our students come with might also shift dramatically. And that also shifts the degree to which we focus on whether it's the language comprehension part or it's the job comprehension part, which also plays into that cultural piece too of how closely aligned is the American culture with the culture that our clients are coming from, in terms of how intuitive certain aspects of getting to work at before 8 a.m. to start your job at 8 a.m. versus arriving around 8-ish. And so to what degree do we need to focus more heavily, more intensively on different elements of the curriculum based on the waves of arrivals that we have and our student base? We also look at the career background because we have career navigators, student success coaches, our career pathways team that meet with our students to ensure that when they graduate from this workforce readiness program, that's not the end. That's not the last they see of us. Hopefully they go on to continue, and usually they go on to continue with general language classes with us, but then placing them in an appropriate bridge class, or if they're at a high enough language level of eligibility, into an IET, into an ICAPS course with our partnering community colleges. And whatever other vocational training programs might be available to these students based on their language level, their career background, their academic background. And so really making sure that we are addressing our students' needs and looking at them from a holistic perspective, not just for the short term, but for the long term as well. Understanding that while you might be placed in what we might refer to as a survival job or an initial placement job, we do recognize that many of our refugee arrivals have significant career experience from their home countries. And so how do we equip them to support the economy in many different ways and to support their families in many different ways by setting them on a long-term trajectory, which also fits in with that academic career component. And now we're going to get into a bit of the, what does it look like in a day-to-day? And so we'll give you a bit of what those experiential integrations look like and why we do them. And I will turn it over to Heather for that. And this is where I will be her guinea pig.
All right, so as Sarah said, and as we've been talking about throughout our time together, one of the aspects that we integrate into class is experience, because a lot of our students are coming from different types of jobs, and maybe jobs that they aren't going to encounter or that they wouldn't have encountered until they came to the US. And so we want to try and prepare them as much as possible for what it's going to be like to work in a factory or a warehouse. So a lot of times we have our students stand for long periods of time because they're going to be doing that. They're not going to be sitting down, picking and packing. They're going to be standing up on hard floors. Sometimes we play music so they get used to how loud and busy it is. If we're doing an activity that requires a lot of movement, walking around, we talk about moving quickly, because you're not going to be moving slowly at work. You got to move fast from place to place. So we're always trying to include different experiences within our classes to get our students prepared to go into the workforce. So one of the activities that we do is called folding towels, and it's pretty basic. You can have a towel or a washcloth like mine. And basically what we have them do is we have them practice folding the towels. So Sarah's going to be my guinea pig. Or I should say my student. And so what we want to do first is I'd model it for her. So I'd be like, okay, Sarah, you have your washcloth. Great. Okay, so this is how I want you to fold it. I want you to fold it once, and then I want you to fold it twice so that it looks like this, a square. And let's see if I can find it. I don't want to see the tag. Right. So I might do this individually with Sarah, or we could do it with teams where they are assembling these, folding these, putting together stacks. If you have boxes or tubs, you could even have them practice packing so they get used to that. So so now that I've modeled it for Sarah, I'm going to have Sarah's, first of all, I need to ask her, Sarah, how many washcloths do you have?
5.
Got 5. Okay. So Sarah, and are they different colors, or are they the same?
Different colors.
Different colors. Okay. All right. So Sarah, I want you to fold all 5 of your washcloths and then show them to us. Okay? And I want you to do it exactly as I modeled it.
All right, there you go.
Those look really good. Can I see? Yeah, can you keep turning them? Those look nice. They seem to be facing the same direction and no tags, so that's good. Now, there's one critique I have for you. You were kind of slow. Yeah, you were kind of slow. So Sarah is going to be slow because this is her first time. She's getting used to it. Just like our clients will have 30 to 60, 90-day probationary period to start learning their job and practice. But they can't be slow forever. They have to make quotas. And so what I would do in a situation like with Sarah is we would just keep doing it in teams. We might make it a competition. Who gets it done quickly. And then whoever wins gets some kind of fun prize like chocolate or something like that. But helping them to understand it's okay to start off slowly, but you have to get faster. And not only do you have to be fast, but you have to be accurate. So again, I've asked Sarah to do folding again, but this time we're going to have a couple changes.
Okay,
And you might want to try and be a little faster too.
do my best.
Okay, now I'm gonna, we don't need to unmute everybody, but Sarah, could you hold those up again?
Mhm.
Yeah. So if you want to in the chat, what do you see that's different about Sarah's stack this time? Does anybody see any differences? See some tags? Exactly. Anything else? Wrong directions? Yes. Anything? Yep, the tags are showing exactly. I specifically told her not to do the tags, but she did it anyway. So maybe she's doing, yeah, they're not quite neat. Exactly. So we've got a couple of problems. They're not neat. They're not facing in the same direction. And those tags are definitely showing. And so what we need to do is I'm going to point that out to her. Okay, Sarah, you were a little faster, but you still need to work on your pace, but your accuracy was off. So remember, when you're doing this, I need to make sure that they're focused, they're going in the same direction. I need to make sure that they're stacked neat, and also that the tags are not showing. That's what our customers expect. And if our customers complain, we lose customers, we lose money. Okay. So we want to work with our students with quickness. We want to work with them with accuracy. We also want to talk about how do they handle criticism? That's all part of the job. And do they push back? Do they argue? And is that acceptable? Is it acceptable to argue with your boss? Especially if maybe you're not right. We want them to be able to interact with their coworkers, ask them a question. Is this okay? And also, if they don't understand something, how can you help me? Or can you show that to me again? That might have been something that maybe Sarah could have asked. Heather, I'm not quite sure I remember how to do this. Can you show it to me again? And again, you can do this with individual students, or you can do it as a team. Right. All right. Okay. And then the next one is an experiential activity that we use with Legos. So some of our students have to do assembly work. And some of that assembly work can be quite small. They're working with cell phones, with hearing aids. And so we want to give our students the opportunity to not only to practice small motor skills, but also what it takes to do assembly work, either on their own or as part of an assembly line. So this is maybe what I would do with some of my classes. Sarah, you have some Legos?
I do.
All right, and what color are your Legos?
Yellow, orange, red, and blue.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Sarah. You can do different things with the Lego. You can have them build an actual Lego design like our little houses. Excuse me. Or you can just have them, put something together. And that's what I'm going to have Sarah do. So Sarah, I need you to stack 5 Legos, one on top of the other. I'm not sure. Okay. So, Sarah, did I ask you to do orange and red?
You just asked me to stack 5.
Oh, I didn't specify. My bad. Okay. So see, even the teacher makes mistakes. All right. So wipe the shame off my face and then say, okay, Sarah, then I need 5 yellow blocks, please. This is where the laughing in class comes in. When the teacher makes the mistake.
All right, there we go.
All right, thank you. Okay, and then Sarah, can I have two blue blocks?
Yes.
And then can I have 2 orange blocks?
There you go.
Great job. All right. So now, so Sarah has completed her block, and she's done a good job. She actually did that quite quickly. And so now I'm going to have her do something where maybe she doesn't quite understand what I want her to do. All right. So, hey, Sarah, I need you to do 5 yellow blocks. I need 3 blue blocks. I need 2 orange blocks and then a blue block on top of that.
Okay. Did you say 5 yellow?
I did say 5 yellow. Good repetition.
Followed by 2 blue?
2 blue. Was it 2 blue? No, I think it was 3 blue.
And then what? I can't remember, Heather, what came after the blue.
That's all right. 2 orange.
Okay. And then a blue on top of that?
And then a blue on top.
Okay. All right.
And I'm not doing this to humiliate her. All right. The point is, I spoke quickly. I gave her multiple things to do, and she couldn't remember them all. And that's okay. You're new on the job. There's a lot going on. There's a lot inundating our clients' senses. And so what we want them to understand is it is okay to ask for assistance. It is okay to ask for repetition. It is okay to ask for help. And, whether that's asking your boss, asking a coworker, it is okay. And in fact, it's needed. If you notice that there's a problem and the clients are just standing there and don't approach the boss, that's going to get them into trouble. And so what we want to encourage them, some of our clients are coming from cultures where it's not okay to talk to the boss. It's not okay to make eye contact with the boss. And so through this experiential learning, we're helping them to understand it's not only okay, but it could be a necessity. It's necessary for you to do that. So when we're doing an activity like this, again, it can be with individuals, it can be a team. We could have 3 or 4 students where one student does the 5 yellow blocks, the next does the 2 blue blocks, the next does the 3 orange blocks. And then we look and see, were they able to follow the instructions correctly? And again, you can make it a contest. Who gets it done fast and accurate? A lot of times what we encounter is our clients think it's okay, you got to finish first, and accuracy is out the door. And so what we are trying to encourage them is you've got to be fast, but you also have to be accurate. And some other ways that you can do both the TOWEL activity and whatever experiential learning activities you decide to incorporate, you can give written instructions. If you have higher level learners who their reading is better, you can give them written instructions. You can give oral instructions. What are ways that you can challenge your students without overwhelming them? And if you don't have Legos and you're thinking, we're going to be starting a class, but we might not have a huge budget. We can't go out and buy Legos. You can do puzzles. You can get little puzzles at the Dollar Tree and have them practice assembling those. I've used really inexpensive little flashlights that I got at the Dollar Tree, take them apart and have them assemble. Anything that gets them having to follow instructions, needing to think about a process, and that gets them to be able to practice not only being fast, but also being accurate, are good activities. And it's also fun. You can have them be the quality control. You can sit back and relax for 10 minutes and have students be the quality control person. Have the students time one another. There are all different types of activities and different skills that you can assess. And when we have our students do these, again, we're looking for, are there problems, or are there students who do a really good job? They step up, they take a leadership role. They're good at directing others. And all of these observations we share with our employment colleagues, so they know what might be challenges, and also what can be some really good situations when our clients get their first jobs in the United States. And Sarah, you did a great job. All right. So just a couple of texts and resources that we have used over the years that I have found helpful. One of them is At Work in the US, from New Readers Press. And it's mostly for, I think, like probably high beginning, low intermediate, but it is all about work. It covers all 4 skill levels. It covers grammar. It's really good. And even if you can't get like an entire set, it's good for the teacher to have, because it gives you a lot of good inspiration for teaching. Also, because our classes, and probably your classes, might be multi-level and highly multi-level, I would recommend highly Teaching Multi-Level Classes by Jill Bell. She's a great writer. She offers a lot of really good examples on how they for activities. And then get yourself, think about what kind of manipulatives you want to use in your class and go out and buy them. Towels you could get at Amazon, or you could, go out and buy some used ones at Goodwill. To practice assembly line work, we do an activity where we have plastic bags, beans and rice, measuring cups and spoons, and a scale. And students have to practice filling the bags with certain weights of rice, certain weights of beans, weighing them, sealing them. And then we have somebody who acts as a quality control person. And always make sure you have a box on hand so the quality control person can test it over the box so your rice doesn't spill all over your floor. We have a time clock so that students can practice clocking in and out. So just think about different activities that you want to incorporate, and ways that you can have students practice those activities in your classroom. If you are going into the sewing field, measuring, is a really good activity for students to be able to do, and they can measure anything. And then the Occupational Outlook Handbook is a really good source, and it's online. It's a good source for sharing videos and sharing job descriptions with your students about specific jobs that they're going to be taking on for their first jobs in the United States. And then also to incorporate digital literacy with the learning, helping them to learn to navigate websites like Indeed.com. So once they're beyond you and they're looking for jobs on their own, they know how to do it online. How to operate and navigate the WorkNet job boards. And really importantly, the public library. You know, they get a free library card, and the public library is a great resource for them. You know, they can use computers for free. There are all kinds of, you know, they can get their tax forms there. They can get help with their taxes there. You know, they can get help applying for jobs, filling out applications, all kinds of things. So those are just a few text and resources that we use. I'm sure you can think of much more. And if you want to, you can put those in the chat. I'm just, all right. So how do you want to start your job class? So who's getting a job? Maybe you can look at in the chat. I'm asking our attendees, you know, who are you working with? Can you put that in the chat? Well, you can start filling in and I'll keep going. So, you know, think about, you know, who are your clients? And you don't need a lot to get a job readiness class started. As Sarah and I have mentioned several times throughout the presentation, what we're doing now is 25 years in the making. I know I wasn't here when we first started doing it, but I did know a few teachers who were, and they talked about, you know, we'd get through one day and then we'd be like, what are we going to teach the next day? They didn't have textbooks. They didn't have worksheets. You know, a lot of it was, you know, making, you know, just trying to think, okay, what does somebody do? What do they need? And so, you know, what they started doing was working with our employment people, collaborating, finding out what language did the students need? What behaviors were good and weren't good? And so we just kept building from there. And of course, we did our own research. You know, what are the publishing houses putting out? What are other programs doing? But you don't have to have everything in place to get started. You know, you start small. You know, you start with your class. You come up with, you know, what do they need to learn? You know, ask them, you know, what do you want to learn? That's one of the things I always ask my students when I start. And I tell them, I know what I'm going to teach you, but I need to know what you want to learn and what you think you need to learn. And so you can start from there. If you have partners, whether it's in the community or within your organization, who are working with your clients to get those jobs, ask them, what do they need to know? What kind of jobs are they going to be doing? You know, is it factory work? Is it assembly work? Is it manufacturing? Is it sewing? You know, are they packing? And all of that information you can take to incorporate. You know, go to other agencies like ours, find out what they're doing, ask them to share their materials, okay? And think in terms of short-term and long-term goals. You know, you're not going to put, again, we've been 25 years in the making, and we're still refining our program. You know, as Sarah said, you know, 15 years when I started teaching, everything was in person. Now we've got in person, we've got hybrid, we're going asynchronous. And so, what are your short-term goals and what are your long-term goals? What do you see in 3 months, 6 months, a year, and 5 years down the road? And here are some essentials that I would strongly recommend for you. And the first bullet point is the one that I really, really, I can't underline it enough. It's really important to have an experienced ELA instructor, particularly somebody with the experience and training in a multi-level environment. We all know teaching multi-levelly is not easy. And if you have one class where you have somebody who is an emergent learner all the way up to somebody who has multiple degrees, that's really difficult, but it can be done. But you need somebody with that experience to help get it done because it can be overwhelming. Again, collaborate with your local workforce innovation board. What kinds of materials can they share with you? What jobs are growing in your region and what jobs are going away? Because you don't want to teach them skills that they're not going to be able to use in a year. Access to employment-specific textbooks and resources. Most of our press, Cambridge, New Readers Press, Pearson, they all have good texts for workforce development. So, go through them, look at them. When you go to conferences, go to the marketplace and look at the ones that you think would best fit, your clients and their workforce needs. And then again, have a tub full of manipulatives, whether it's towels, it's Lego, it's dominoes, it's Jenga, just have a tub full where students can practice, having, activities that are not only fun, but also helping them learn and prepare them for their first jobs in the United States. Yeah, and the last one is really and truly, don't be afraid to dive in. It might be ugly and it's probably going to be ugly, and that's okay. Because remember, just like we tell our students, this first job is not your only job. It's just your first one. You're going to move on and move on. And it's the same thing. This first class is not going to be your only class. And, I think good teaching is also about experimenting, what works and what doesn't. And so that's one other thing. You need to be reflective. What works, what doesn't work. Why didn't it work? Find somebody you can bounce ideas off of. But don't be afraid to try, jump in, and just be willing to live with the mess for a while. All right.
That's great. Thanks, Heather. And that concludes our presentation for today. We did want to open it up to any questions that might be lingering, but then also an invitation to contact us, either of us, Heather or myself, to come and visit one of our classes, to ask more specific questions, or to learn about the asynchronous course we're piloting this spring.
So we've got I just want to comment on some of the things that came in from the chat about what their students. So somebody has 17 to 24-year-old GED students. Yes, we're working with a WIOA group that is roughly the same age. Spanish immigrants between 22 and 36, new arrivals and refugee community, immigrants and refugees of all ages from all over the world, and then GED bridge students, and many are immigrants.
Thank you all for joining us today. And again, we love talking about workforce development and workforce readiness, and would be more than open to talk more about this in the future. Thank you all.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sarah and Heather. If there's any other questions, feel free to put those in the chat or the Q&A. And I just want to remind everyone about the follow-up email that you will receive tomorrow with the presentation and the Zoom link and everything, or the recording, excuse me. And I did put the presentation slides in the chat as well, so you can feel free to download those. Getting lots of thank yous. Lacey says, what sorts of employers are you working with?
Oh,
Yeah, we have over 200 employers that we're working with in the DuPage and Aurora area. And that varies based on, again, our students' background and education and experience. So from what Heather spoke about in terms of packing and manufacturing, all the way through to more career readiness employers, but all within the DuPage Aurora community.
and I would just like to put a plug in for our employment team with whom we work like this. And that's, you know, that's one of their responsibilities is they're out in our region constantly building new relationships with companies. So there are places to put our students. And one of the things that I think helps them be able to place students is the fact that they can say, these students have gone through this 5-week training. They're prepared language-wise and, you know, with an understanding of the workforce culture of the United States. And so, so it's very helpful to them. And we work like this with our team.
Okay, anything else?
Yes, the meeting was recorded.
Yes, it was. And the recording and presentation slides will be on our website as well as Illinois WorkNet. You can find them there and you will get that URL to both in the follow-up email tomorrow. Okay, anything else? Getting lots of thank yous. Well, thank you so much, Sarah and Heather, for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I will, everyone, please look forward to the follow-up email tomorrow. And I think we'll go ahead and close us out for today.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.